Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Flexing Joe. I'm back with another ES NQ and VIX recap. Today we're going to be talking about Tuesday, October 29th, and what a trend day it was. So let's get started by looking at the VIX, right? So you see the VIX here where we closed at 3:50 p.m. and where we opened overnight. You can see a nice bullish trend. We're gapping up. Live on stream, the prep for Tuesday morning in the House of Stacks, I was talking about this pivot right here at 20.51. Right, so this is from the 25th high of day. What I called out was if we push up and when we continue to base and go higher, this would be really bearish for the market, but we could push up. You could see the potential fake out, breakout type look, and then see the rejection, and that's exactly what we got. So we push up into that pivot, we just barely break over it, fake out, breakout, immediately knife back down, very bullish sign after you see such a rejection from the level, and then we continue to move down decisively and fill the gap up, right? You'll see that on NQ, there was really just a very, very small gap, and in fact, it was actually a gap up. See, this is where we closed right here at 20,500, and then we opened up right here at 20,511. So micro gap up, immediately that gap up is filled, it pushes down, we sweep under the session low, can't close under the session low, and then we start, reversing back upwards, right? We really want to call out on NQ a couple things. The first is that on the 2-minute chart, you'll see that even though the candle by candle on the 10-minute hasn't flipped, the 2-minute EMAs are turning decisively bullish. And they're giving you a lot of reason to try the long. If you follow supply and demand, or if you just use EMAs or support and resistance, whatever, let's just call a couple things out. First things first is you have the opening print. Opening print pushes down. They try to, again, reject off the opening print. They make a higher low. They're making a higher low sitting on top of here. Then they push back up. Now they're over the opening print. This is your 10 a.m. news candle. And now they're basing on the opening print. So this is stuck sellers trying to get out. If you look at it in terms of supply, you see that this initial supply wick up here where buyers pushed up, sellers stepped in hard and they shoved it down. Now any stuck sellers who are still there, trying to get out for break even or what have you, and they turn into buyers and they start pushing it back up. You had some really crazy candles and some crazy wicks. Like this wasn't a news candle, but this was obviously concerning for the bulls, but ultimately it holds the EMAs and continues to push higher. We go back to the 10-minute. What makes the NQ chart really confusing is that you actually don't get a candle by candle flip long until the 1050 candle closes, and that's because the rule is for the indicator that it has to close over the prior candle's high. So you see long wick here, this doji just barely doesn't do it because of this long wick. It doesn't happen here. Crazy long wick doesn't happen here. This is still a strong candle, but it doesn't take out this wick, so it doesn't happen. Finally it happens, and then you don't get a flip back bearish for quite some time. So after all this and seeing it finally flip bullish, it glides into the EMAs and then it just takes off, right? This was a deep pullback. Unfortunately, it's probably wicked some people out, trading off the 2-minute or lower time frame charts. But ultimately, it gets scooped back up and it pushes, right? So, everywhere that there's an arrow ends up being a really good entry, even if you took it up here. I call this one out because you had the candle by candle flip short. However, it flips into the EMAs. It doesn't actually close any lower. There's no follow through. And then you could have a strong base here to assign risk off of, and then it pushes higher. So if we compare this chart, obviously the VIX turns bearish, which is bullish for the market here at 950. You don't get that candle by candle flip on NQ, but you do, however, get it on ES, and then it's off to the races, right? ES had this 2 gaps to be concerned with. I know I'm kind of weaving in my gap strategy here with this VIX video, but I want to just show you guys, right? This is where we closed on Friday. Talked about it in yesterday's video. This is where we opened. So you had this sizable gap up. Then you have this overnight price action, and ultimately it comes down, scoops under this gap low here. And actually, if we, I just want to just put on, this is the low of day on Friday, and this was like that little after hours low. You see we hit the after hours low and almost hit the low of day. So we're entering some sort of demand, right? Because that demand did try to push it higher. So sellers fail to push it any lower. You get the gap fill, right? From Monday into Tuesday, that gap is filled and it just continues to base here. And it pushes up higher and you're riding the 10-minute EMA. So not as clean as NQ in terms of, frequent pullbacks. However, if we compare all three together, right, let's look at your first CBC flip long on the VIX right here off the 10-minute 200. You know, you're way past the orb low. You've already filled the gap. You're very bearish on your EMAs, right? And you get a flip here. However, you got to flip. You got to flip on ES a couple candles prior, but you're not getting the flip back bearish on NQ. So you can see that you have a trend that's bullish and only 2 out of the 3 flipped bearish, which means that it's probably going to be a pullback, right? So if you're watching just to wait and see how the pullback is going to react, you see how ES starts to try to base off its 10-minute 200, and then ultimately 2 candles later, you flip back bearish. So VIX flips back bearish here at 1140, right? At 1130, ES has flipped back long, and NQ stayed long. So it gives you more confirmation to take it long on a pullback if it gives it to you. Again, you get a flip long here at 1220. It's a little bit slow and choppier at lunchtime anyways. You don't get a flip on NQ, and you do get a little flip on ES, but sorry, on VIX, but it's micro. Like, it's just this tiny little thing, and then it drops off. So, you know, all of these dip buys were fantastic opportunities, and the reason I like to watch the gaps the way I do is, typically speaking, if I see it get filled and then we still hold the golden zone of the gap, this 50 to 61 area, and really you could, depending on how you drew the gap, right? I draw it from the close to the open, but you know, if you look at this whole area, you'll see that this is where buyers are really stepping up and they're trying to support it, right? And we just end up pushing higher, basing on it, pushing higher, right? So, pretty easy day to just follow the trend. You had the initial move down, which was the fake out, and then it just pops and it rode up from there. So hopefully you all traded well and made some money. And I appreciate you all for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next one.